Hi, welcome back to our series about technology implementation and construction. Here today talking with Kirk Schroeder, who's a faculty member at Brigham Young University, Idaho, focused on scheduling BIM applications for construction management students. How you doing, Kirk?
Doing great.
Great.
Josh.
So could you tell us a little bit more about your career, just generally, when you started, how long you've been working, what kind of positions you've held over the years?
Okay, well that's going to take the whole interview right there. No, I'm just kidding. Construction, I guess we're working my way forward. It was introduced in high school into architecture, and I love designing and doing hand, drawings of houses, and then got into college and was going to be an architect, but then had an interest in working with my hands and being involved in actually the building of a project. And so I switched to construction management and graduated there at BYU Provo back in 2000. And from there, I had a lot of home building experience, and I enjoyed doing surveying. And I was on a survey crew and a framing crew, and just did general maintenance and finish work. And I wanted to gain experience in commercial, and had an offer to go work for a commercial company back east in Vermont. Mm-hmm. And it was we felt good about it. It was a good opportunity, so we got in our car, packed up, and drove all the way across country to Vermont. And
wow,
and it was a great experience. They had a very good development program for their project engineers to help develop them and train them to be superintendents or project managers. And a lot of different directions they could have gone there, but worked with that company. And the type of projects I worked on, I was a field engineer on a underground parking garage, a hospital project. I did office buildings for Cigna Healthcare in Pennsylvania, and then in New York did some dormitories at a university, and then was given the opportunity to work on a semi-conductor plant at IBM in Vermont, and had some experience there. And this is all part of the training that they gave us to become project engineers. And I wanted, after that, I guess, rotation was done, we called it, I wanted experience in the self-perform arena, because this company did wastewater treatment plants and water treatment plant work.
Okay.
And in all the large bore piping, heavy concrete, a lot of dirt work and process piping and electrical work. So I took with the same company, moved down to South Carolina and worked on a wastewater treatment plant, and as a project engineer. After about a year of that, the scheduler took another offer somewhere else, and so I was asked to become the scheduler, and so I had experience, and I liked scheduling in Primavera, and so I did that for a while. Then after that, moved on that project, had an opportunity to go work at a semi-conductor plant in New Mexico again, a major one in the world, and so I went there and became a project manager, managing base build projects and tool install projects for all disciplines, all the process, the MEP trades and the CSA trades as well. Mm-hmm. So that's where I most of my career since that point was involved in the advanced manufacturing semiconductor arena.
Yeah.
And I eventually left that first company. I was with them for 7 years because they wanted me to move back east, and we were in New Mexico at that time, and we wanted to stay out west. So I quit and took an offer with the company I was a construction manager for. When I was with the company was Pizza Galley Construction, and then I was managing all the different trades. And so one of the subcontractors that the company name was Brycon, got an offer from them to work with them. And they were a mechanical, electrical, and piping an architectural company that they did all disciplines within the semiconductor plant. So became a project manager for them and was with them for 7 years, did many different projects, mostly semiconductor work, in some in New York, some in Arizona, New Mexico, and Oregon. Then we moved on and had personal reasons to move our family up to Utah, and so we did. And so I left Bricon after 7 years and took on some work. I had an opportunity to work with a company called ICO Construction, which is the commercial division of Ivory Homes, and they did multi-level mixed-use apartment complexes.
Okay.
And so that was I was a superintendent there, and then was offered an owner's rep position out at Tesla, the Gigafactory in Reno. And,
Wow.
and they said Tesla, and I'm like, of course I want that opportunity. I want to see what's going on over, what is Elon Musk doing over in Nevada. And so went over there to do some estimating, set up their unit rate contracts for piping and mechanical. And then I rolled into some process piping and electrical construction management work at the Gigafactory there.
Okay.
So I was there, and when that contract was up, I did a little stint down in a research and development place in Malibu, and then wanted the opportunity to get deeper into BIM, into 3D modeling, and because that was where I started. I liked design work, and so after all that construction management and field work, I felt like it was a good opportunity to become a BIM manager. I had the opportunity to go back and work with Bricon and start up their BIM program for them and build it again. And so I did move back to Arizona and built that team, and a wonderful team, good experience, modeling all their piping and electrical and architectural clean rooms, the scopes of work there. And that's when BYU approached me after about 2 years there with this opportunity to teach, and just felt really good about it and love helping people grow and the younger generation especially just see what's possible, see what's available in the world of construction. It's a lot more than most people think.
Yeah, that's true.
It is true. So then we felt really good about this experience, and after many interviews, here I am. I'm teaching, and I love it.
Well, that's great. Yeah, you mentioned to me earlier before we started the interview that you're teaching mostly scheduling and BIM. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, your resume is really impressive. You've kind of, from a construction management standpoint, you've kind of done it all, right? You've done project engineering, project management, you've been a superintendent, you've been an owner's rep, and a BIM manager. So that's really kind of a well-rounded resume. You've done a lot of things. Is there anything that you wish? Well, let's back up. Let's talk a little bit more about. Well, how did you get into BIM? I mean, how did you end up learning the software that you needed as a BIM manager?
Yeah, I learned it from the smart people, the ones that knew how to do it. I just asked a lot of questions.
So
I had a great.
Was it on the job training? Like you learned it on the job, or was it your own initiative, or a little bit of both?
Well, it was kind of a combination of that. I had learned about 3D modeling back in the early 2000s, 2002, 3, kind of how it was beginning. People were doing it, but it wasn't embraced as much as it is now. So I started learning about it from some engineers, and then got away from it, and then came back. And one of the customers said, "We have to model everything," and we're like, "Well, we don't have a BIM team." And so at that time we kind of scrapped a team together, and I was the process piping project manager at the time. And so we worked together with the current BIM manager with that company and built the team. And so we just worked together a lot. So I like to learn what software they used. We used AutoCAD MEP at the time.
Okay.
For all of our modeling, electrical and architectural work. And then we, that contract was up, and they said no more BIM. But I ended up getting in when I became the BIM manager for Bricon. I started just researching out there what software was people using, especially on the process piping and electrical arenas,
Mhm.
and learned that there's various different software, AutoCAD MEP, Plant 3D, and those were the two main ones in Revit. And we were doing everything in AutoCAD MEP at the time. And I realized that to move into the future, to kind of evolve with um, the rest of the industry, it seems we made the switch 100% to Revit. So we
Okay.
moved everybody over to Revit. We had to build our families again, and so just it was I had to watch a lot of videos, get on the internet, just talk with people, build through the network of people I knew, and you just gain a lot of information. And there's so many different software applications that you have to look into
Yeah.
to make it work. Navisworks and which is fairly simple, but that's your coordination software, and then Revit and AutoCAD MEP, Plant 3D, and how those what's behind all that software. What makes it all work. You have to know that. When you're
Right.
building your models. If the part's not correct, then your model's not going to work. And so we had to really start focusing in on the families within Revit, and it was just an evolution. It kind of a incremental learning process. And like you said, on the job training was we were encountered with a problem, and we're like, okay, how are we going to fix this? Let's talk to some engineering firms, some consulting firms, and understand what they're doing. And we brought some of those in and contracted with them to help us develop our, I guess the software infrastructure, if you will,
Okay.
that goes behind BIM. And then one of the most important things was we had to bring the field into the office, or the office out to the field, so that we could work together with the installing teams.
Mhm.
Um, and that's one of the biggest challenges, is having people, the install team and the BIM team, separate and not working together. Because then you just get a lot of finger pointing. And they say, well, hey, the modelers did it, it didn't work, and vice versa. Well, they're not helping us, and you get that. And so we had to bring them together and have coordination meetings
Sure.
regularly to get buy-in and dual ownership into the model. So it's kind of a long answer to a short question, but
No, that's okay. Yeah, just I've kind of found, so I'm a big Autodesk Revit user. That's kind of been the principal software that I've been focused on, the past, gosh, 7 years. Got started with Revit. Prior to that, I was an electrician. So it just kind of blew my mind that you could do this kind of thing in a computer. As somebody who used to work in the field, it was just phenomenal that you could create a three-dimensional model of it and visualize it all before. So I think, um, well, so one of the things I like about Revit, I mean, you mentioned getting the field and the office, the field and the office people to work together. I've kind of found in Revit that it really helps, as a BIM manager or BIM engineer. It really helps to get that field input, because Revit is structured so that it kind of helps you build a model as you would build it out in the field, right? It kind of
Mhm.
forces you to think through the sequence of how everything's coming together, what the means and methods are. And so I think it's a great opportunity to learn, about construction means and methods in the digital space, and that, like what you said, the involvement of the field in that process is crucial. Otherwise, it just doesn't work, right? Because as a construction manager, you're not just creating a model, for someone to visualize something. You're creating a model to help, your crew build a structure or install pipe, or what have you, equipment. So it's really important for a BIM engineer or BIM manager to really understand, what the means and methods are in construction, how things actually come together.
Yeah,
So that's interesting that you said that. Um,
absolutely.
yeah, so I imagine that you sat in a lot of, or you probably managed a lot of BIM coordination meetings, right, with a lot of different people.
Hmm.
hmm So
Yes.
can you? I was just in a BIM coordination meeting about 10 minutes ago, 10 minutes before the call, and it was kind of, we've been working on the project. It's just been 2 weeks, but it's been kind of a rocky start, and I think it can be overwhelming for a BIM coordination manager, when they're first starting to You know, because you're working with modelers who are working with a lot of different software, right? You've got some people working in AutoCAD, AutoCAD MEP, some people are doing Revit. So what is some advice that you would give to a BIM coordination manager in how to have successful BIM coordination meetings?
Wow. Well, you got to be organized. You kind of got to know what you're talking about a little bit. So that's where it takes you doing your due diligence and understanding the process, first off, and document the process. Now, you don't want to take control of the meeting because you're not the magic behind it all.
Right.
As a BIM manager and coordinator, you're not working the magic. The modelers in the field, they're the ones that make it work. And you're there to facilitate and help them kind of clear the path and give them the right tools at the right time so that they can create a constructible model. And so your ability to communicate and coordinate your modelers with the field and building trust there, I think that's where you have to start. You got to start with a base competency in the process of working in the 3D world for construction, and understand the challenges that the field has, and so that when you talk to them, you find out, you have to go, I guess, work it backwards from the installation back to the model. How is it going to go in, and embrace the field to develop those models, and that's the biggest advice I would give to any new BIM manager or a VDC coordinator, is you got to just interact with the people doing the actual work, putting it together. Because if you bring a process piping foreman in to review your model, he or she's going to look at that model and look at those lines, and they're going to look at the PNIDs, the 2D dimensional drawings, in the 3D, and they're going to say, well, where's that valve? What's the orientation of that valve? Is that the correct valve? Right. Do you have the family right? Is it just a valve that you put in there, or a damper that you put in there, or is it the right one with the right model number and everything in it? Because if it's not going to work in the field, because they're going to buy a part from the warehouse or from the manufacturer, and you're going to model with a different part, and nothing fits. And so all your spool drawings are wrong, and your ISOs are going to be wrong. And so you have to build that relationship there, and then they're going to ask the tough questions, and they're going to say, hey, is that the right kind of 90? Where's that reducer placed? Where is it the right flange? Do you got the right amount of bolts and gaskets? Is the gasket even in there? And you get into those fine details of your model. What about my supports? Where are my supports going to be placed? And because they want to know how are you going to help me install my project faster? That's what they really want to know, or more efficiently, so I can eliminate rework. And you don't want to be someone telling the field how to do it, because they know how to do it. They've been doing it for years, and you're just trying to draw how they've been doing it for years, so that they can prefabricate things a lot faster, and then they'll gain trust once you have a good model and they've looked at it, and then they buy into it, and your ISOs go out and it gets prefabricated, and they put their hangers up, and everything just starts fitting in place, and you've coordinated with all the other trades. Then it just takes time for them to build that confidence in each other and in your models. But that's where I would look, kind of focus more on, is you got to build that relationship between the field and your modelers and your team, and gain that trust. And it takes time. The other part is you have to have the correct families or catalogs or parts. We built our MEP parts, fab parts, and used them in Revit, because piping, you can build the parts better in AutoCAD. But you have to build those correctly and get the right parameters set up in them. Because the other part of it is they want to know, when I'm done modeling, well, how much? Can you click a button and tell me? That's what the field will say. Can you click a button and tell me, how many linear foot of 6-inch carbon steel piping I have? How many flanges do I have? How many valves of this type do I have? Right. And without hand taking it off, you should be able, if you do it right, with your families and model it right, you should be able to run a schedule or put it into another software and give them that number really quick. And that'll gain confidence in them a lot. It'll save them a lot of time in ordering and in the procurement side of getting the materials there. So I could talk a long time about this kind of stuff, but
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think the main takeaway from this is that it's important to build trust with your team, and it takes time to build that trust. And sometimes it takes, I guess what we're focused on is accuracy, modeling to the field condition. Um, for some of our listeners who maybe don't know much about building information modeling, or BIM, for short, is that it's a model of the three-dimensional structure with data. We call them parameters embedded in. It's like something that Kirk was mentioning was that you could click on, you could aggregate a variety of number of different fittings for pipe. And then you could have your building information model report the quantity of that. But it all has to do with the parameters, right? The data that you're putting into the model has to be accurate, and the geometry has to be accurate.
yeah,
Or like what you said, it's not going to fit together. And I guess that's maybe what happens, because over the years, a lot of construction companies have tried to implement BIM. A lot have been successful, but some have failed. And I think that the pinch point really is that trust, right? If your superintendent is leading the charge out in the job site, and you have a project where the BIM model just wasn't accurate, nothing fit together, nothing was correct, you're going to erode trust, and that superintendent isn't going to want to do. They're not going to work with building information modeling again, right? Your craft labor isn't going to want to do anything digitally again, because the inaccuracies in the model produced inaccuracies in the field. So
yeah, they'll say, see, I told you so. I told you it wouldn't work. And you're like, oh, okay. So no, you got to find those pioneers, those people within the field that say, I want this to work. I'm excited about it. I just don't know how it works. And that's one thing we did is we early on went in there, we brought some engineers in and some modelers with some base software experience and that knew how to run Revit and the families and Navisworks. Then we said, you know what? We want to train some pipe fitters. Hopefully you don't hear that background noise. Do you hear that background noise? Not too bad.
No, I think it's fine.
Okay, good. Sorry, that was kind of an interruption there. So we went out to the field and we would get to know the field, the foreman, the journeyman, and any of the apprentices. Some of them have really good, computer skills. Some of them have interest and they just don't know they would love to get into it, but they don't know that they could. And so we would go and work with our piping and electrical PMs and say, hey, we want to make good models for you. And one way to do that is get people that know how to install it in the field and teach them modeling.
Right.
And you could do it reverse, teach a computer dude how to install, but I think it's harder that way to do it.
Yeah.
Pull guys from the field. And we did that. We got some journeymen, some welders and electricians, and we taught them how to model. And they had some computer aptitude and they're fantastic. And their models are super clean because when they model, they think in their mind, how am I going to put this in?
Right.
And normal modelers well, I don't know. I've never done it before. I don't know how it's going to really go. And I've never put my hands on a piece of pipe or ductwork. And so they have a different mindset. And so that's what we did. We pulled people out of the field, not to hurt the production in the field, but we said the right people, pull them in because it's going to help the field go faster and better in the future. And that builds trust too, because they know the field and everybody says, whose model is that? Oh, that's Isaac's model.
Yeah.
And then they have confidence and they're like, okay, Isaac did it. We know he knows what he's doing in the field. And that's one key thing I would recommend too, is if you're getting some modelers or VDC coordinators, find someone that has a lot of field experience and teach them the software. That would help.
That's a good point. You don't hear about that a lot. But yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, there is a learning curve with the software, but it's not nearly as steep as the learning curve with actually doing it, right? I mean,
Mhm.
at least for me, it took me a long time. When I was an electrician, it took me a long time to pick up those skills versus when I learned Revit, it was just a couple months. And I was able to use the software at a basic level, right? It takes a bit longer to get advanced, but um, I think that that's a good strategy, and I think that a lot of construction firms don't really think about it that way. They think, well, we need somebody who really knows the technology, but maybe a better strategy would be, let's take the people that know the craft and teach them the technology, and let them manage these projects. Because
Oh yeah.
like the role of a BIM coordination manager, especially, right? Because it's pretty simple to just coordinate a lot of different parties. Because you have you might have your mechanical subcontractor, your plumbing subcontractor, your electrician. They're all making their own models, and what you're doing as a collaborator is just, or as the coordinator, is just facilitating collaboration between the different parties. And it's a lot more valuable to have somebody that understands what these people are going through,
Yeah.
understands their constraints. um, yeah, because in my career, I think that the best coordination managers have been the ones that really understand the construction means and methods and what it takes to actually install the product.
Yeah, I like to visualize and give a new name to a VDC coordinator or a BIM manager. Is you call them, you're a virtual superintendent is what you are.
Oh yeah.
And so really you have to know all constructability aspects of it.
Mhm.
You have to make sure that if it's on the 2D prints, it's in the model. Every component that's there has to be in the model, and you have to know and then look at the layout and say, okay, where are my hangers? You got to know the spec. And so you can call these guys out and say, hey, your spacing on your hangers is not per spec, or you got the wrong valve there, or you got is that the correct pump that you've modeled in there? And so they have to know how to run, look at one line diagrams and P&IDs and all the layout for MEP, and even in structural too. They got to look at all of that.
Yeah.
But so they got to be very savvy with reading. We call them blueprints, but that's old-fashioned drawings. So we'll just call them reading the
Construction
2Ds.
drawings, yeah.
Yeah, the docs, and then linking those with the specs, and then understanding how to pull the information out of there. And then when you fly the model, flying it, is this constructible? You don't want to take liability for telling a person how to do it, but
Mhm.
you identify the problem. You'd fly through in the model and say, okay, I identified this problem. What do you recommend? And then they have to solve it. The trades do, but knowing what questions asked, like as if you were a superintendent in the field.
Yeah.
You do the same thing in the field with the trades.
Well, absolutely. I think that that's such a beautiful point because, a lot of time, I've been involved with the construction technology side for quite a few years. And, every year, as I listen to the software developers, listen to industry leaders talk about technology, I think that that's a really important point that people are missing, is that technology is wonderful and it's a wonderful tool, but it really can't replace just a really good, solid knowledge of construction and how to look at details and read through specifications. Because it's really that the attention to detail of the engineer that's building the model that makes it all work, right?
Mm.
Because what's the point of running clash detection or building a model if it's not going to add value to the finished structure, right? If it's modeled
Mhm.
wrong, there's really not a lot of value in even doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good point. And, as a VD&C engineer, that's been the point that's been kind of driven home for me over the years, is just the input from superintendents, from project managers of, you know, you need to know what the plans are. If we're looking at the model, you should be able to tell me which sheet this is on,
Mhm.
what detail this is in the structural drawings or the mechanical drawings, right? So there has to be that knowledge, that base understanding of project management and construction means and methods.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
right.
great. Well, um, let's see. Is there anything else you'd like to add, Kirk? to the conversation? I did. Or,
I'm looking at some of your notes here that you sent out.
okay.
Okay, you asked a question too. How is this degree, the VDC degree, different than the CM degree?
Yeah, that's something we we talked with Mike Sessions and Nate Allen earlier this week. And those videos will be posted later, but we were talking about the VD&C degree, and it's a really an innovative degree. I haven't heard many school. I don't even know if there is another school that's offering a degree like this. So
yeah,
what are you hoping that students will learn in the VD&C program that they wouldn't learn in the just the typical construction management degree?
well, we've kind of talked a bit about what I wish they would learn. Gosh, where do I start? Want the students to first off gain an appreciation for the tradesman as a VDC engineer in the degree, because I think they have the misconception that I'm just a modeler, I'm a designer, I'm an office guy.
Yeah.
But if you want to succeed and be sought after long term and be able to not limit your growth, you have to get outside of that mindset and say, I have to go to the field. I have to learn from the field. And the people that their professions are building buildings, installing systems,
Right.
and they make a livelihood off of that. And to appreciate that and learn from them, because that'll make these students way better. And like, again, that trust will be built. You'll go to a job site and you'll be on a job site and they'll say, what modeler should I have, or what VDC engineer, and they'll name your name. They'll say, I want this person.
Yeah.
Because I know how they work with the field. I know how they when they review models, when they coordinate models, they're thinking with the field in mind. So have them gain that appreciation, and to not just look at, I'm just going to be work for a big GC and coordinate models. Now you want to open their minds to working for an electrical company, process piping company, mechanical company, because they've innovated before most of the GCs did, because they were doing a lot of this stuff beforehand, because they had to prefabricate a lot of their stuff.
Right.
Structural steel, they've been doing it for decades.
Right.
And they model this stuff up and they create all their cut sheets and their fabrication drawings. They've been doing it for a long time. So to not limit yourself in that realm, and everybody wants to work for the big company. Well, work for that one discipline, and a lot of times you'll make a better living that way as well, and you'll be better at it. So open their minds that way, but to also you cannot get comfortable in VDC because it is constantly changing. In 1 year I saw probably 3 or 4 new coordination softwares out there.
Yeah.
I'm like, well, which one do you use? Okay, well, this one's good this way, this one's good this way, this. And I'm like, well, okay, let's and things are changing so fast in the 3D world.
Yeah.
And the field, once the 3D can catch up with the field, things are going to be automated a lot more. And to not limit yourself, so don't think, okay, I'm just going to be a modeler, I'm just going to be 3D stuff forever. It's going to change. Think of how you can change. How can you use AR and VR in your world? How you can optimize your laser scanning and make that faster and register your scans so you can see existing conditions. And there's so many parts of it that they have to be innovators. They have to get good at what they're doing, but also not just stop there. Keep researching and learning. And that's what I hope to do in these classes, is to stay engaged with contacts I have and what's going on, what new projects are going on, what new technology are you using, and our seminars do that, but those personal contacts, and bring them into the classroom, bring those professionals into the classroom and say, this is what we're doing today. And these students will go, oh, okay, well, that's what I want to focus on, and so that's, I don't know if it's CM, you have to innovate, but the CM stuff is more stable. I think VDC is going to be changing so fast.
It has. I mean, yeah, it's we're talking about Revit, which is like a parametric modeling tool, and then several years ago they released Dynamo for Revit, which is a computational design tool. So you can really start to automate a lot of the things that you're doing parametrically in Revit. And now, in the past year or so, that they're talking about generative design, which is basically using machine learning computer algorithms to solve construction design problems for you with the computer. And so it's advancing quite a bit really fast. And you have to be someone who likes to learn, who wants to innovate, who wants to stay on the cutting edge. But then again, there are some fundamentals that you learn that never really go away, right? We've talked a lot about working with families. Like that's a very fundamental process that if you can master, it's not really going to change. Like those are the bones of what makes Revit work, right? So if you understand that, and then I like what you said too about bringing people in to meet students, because it's one thing to learn the technology and how to use the software. It's another thing to visualize, what am I going to do with this, right? You know, because it's a wonderful thing to be able to create a model, but then you have to understand, how am I going to leverage the model? What am I going to use the model for, right?
Yeah.
You have to, and we talked a lot about using it for the field, but there's a lot of other applications, right? Like, how can I use my model for estimating? How can I use my model to manage my project schedule? How can I use the model to benefit the owner, the end user of the building? So, it's always important to keep that in mind. Who is the end user? Who can use this model? What do they want to see from it? What are the outputs? So that's a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you make a point there with the facilities team, the owner. There is an owner, but the real owners are the facility management team.
Right.
Because they're the ones driving the car afterwards.
Right.
And so you have to think, okay, think from their mindset. What am I going to hand over to them? Do a clean handoff. Don't fumble the ball. It's a clean handoff with all the information they need, so that they can take over the building, get the right training, and have all the tools right in their system, within their model, and within their FM system, facility management system. All the data is there for them. And if you think of that beginning with the end in mind, you can do that. You can build your families and put data in there that the facilities team can use in the end. So there's a lot more to think about. And most construction people don't even think about that. They just, I'm building a building and I'm moving on. And a lot of owners will hire third-party companies to come in and be that link between the contractor and facilities, to make sure that facilities gets what they need.
Right.
And that's where you can be innovative as the owner's rep or commissioning agent, and be innovative there to help out the facilities team. And it's super exciting to me. And some people don't even understand that you can, be a facility manager with this degree.
Right.
And they have facility management degrees, but why limit yourself? You can get a very long-term stable job at a big old, the Gigafactory, or a Samsung plant or something like that. You can be a construction manager for your whole career, or facilities, doing stuff that you love, but be stable instead of jumping all over the world, which is exciting too.
Yeah.
But there's different opportunities, and some of them don't know that. I last semester met with a gentleman, and he's been at Intel for 25 years, graduated college, 25 years he's been there as the CM.
Yeah.
And people are like, I didn't know you could do that in construction.
Yeah.
And you can, if you get, you look to those big companies, they all need them. They all need construction managers, because they're renovating and retooling their factories and stuff like that. So
yeah, there's never a lack. I mean, I worked in the electrical department at BYU-Idaho, helping with the facilities manager. It's kind of a beautiful thing. All the electricians I worked with had been at BYU-Idaho for 20, 30, 40 years. They knew where everything was. They knew where all the conduits were in the walls. We could walk into a building and our lead electrician knew exactly what we were doing, just because he'd been there for so long. He knew the building inside and out. So, facilities management is really, it's a challenge, especially when you're working with older structures. You're trying to manage a building that was built a long time ago with old construction methods. And with these newer facilities, a BIM model can really aid the facilities manager because then they have an understanding of where everything is. A good facilities manager will continue to update that BIM model, as they add things to the structure. So it's really a good tool.
Yeah, let me shut the door real quick. Let's get
Okay, no problem.
The dog opened the door, left it open. I can't believe it. That's funny. But yeah, you speaking of facilities, if when you're modeling it, we usually like to get the facility, we call them tool owners or facility management team, reviewing the model as well. We would have, before we call them IFF meetings, or just, before you can issue for fabrication, the approval of the final model, let facilities review it as well.
Yeah.
And ask them questions, because they're the owners, and they can say, you know what, gosh, can you rotate that valve down, 90 degrees instead of where it's at, it's going to block my view. And you just don't think about that because they need to access those things long term. And so placement of things is important for them, and just to involve them.
Yeah, I've got a funny story about that. I was working at a casino in Washington, and we were doing our final walkthrough with the facilities management team, and this was like a 3-week process, right? Well, we came to one of the bathrooms, and the head of the facilities management team was asking, how do we refill the soap dispenser? And then come to find out, you had to go up into the access panel in the ceiling, climb through the ceiling. The soap dispenser was way up there for some reason. So yeah, it is really important to think of the end user, because someone to this day is having to get up there every week to refill the soap dispenser. So
yeah,
there's a lot of little details that are important for the facility owner.
Yeah, exactly. People some people think, it's not my problem.
Right.
It's someone else's problem. We don't want to think that way, ever think that way. Just, I want to do what's right for the end user, but also think they have to spend man hours on it. They have to get into compromising situations that could cause them to get potentially injured, and so safety wise, you got to think you can review models for safety reasons as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another realm that I don't think we've got into as much in the having safety managers look at things, and because that is something that you have to deal with long term.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I mean, when I was working at Swinnerton, we'd have to come up with bracing plans because we were putting up a structural frame. So we were modeling in all the temporary bracing and all the temporary the safety railing, things like that. So yeah, I think people are getting into it more now than they were, but yeah, that's another important consideration. Just the temporary engineering, the safety engineering, those are really important parts of the project.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Well, Kirk, thanks for sitting down and talking with me today. Really appreciate your time. I think if I could encapsulate the main takeaway from our interview today, I'd say that building information modeling is more than just knowing some technology or some software. It's really understanding what the end goal is of the technology, whether it's helping a tradesman install something correctly, or helping an owner manage their facility, or helping an architect facilitate design. It's important as a BIM engineer, BIM manager, to understand who the end user is and really collaborate with that person to build something that's meaningful and useful for the end user. So
yeah, good.
All right, thank you so much, Kirk.
All right, you're welcome.
Thank you so much for watching our video today. If you would like to receive more of this content, feel free to like and subscribe. Also, please feel free to leave a comment below. We'll try to answer any questions or comments in our next video interview. Thank you. Bye.